Well, good evening. Here we are again for another evening of discussion about, well, I guess it's not much discussion because I don't really get any calls, um, but not conversation, about actually just me talking about the book of Revelations, T and Doe, UFOs, space aliens, comets, end times, science, pretty much anything can come up. And I do pay attention to the chat room. And and this is not a effort to attract followers or an effort to recruit people into some group or cult. Could care less about that. I have enough on my hands with, with doing what I'm doing, and I'm not actually equipped to actually lead anybody anyway. I was asked today if who's leading Heaven's Gate. Well, my answer to that was T and Doe. They're very much alive. I was visited by Doe just the other day in a dream. I know it was him. He was correcting me, actually, trying to help me with some of what I am trying to do because it's a progressive service. The next level, it's like, in a sense, like the military, to where you're in a training program, and the sergeant or the captain and the admiral, they put pressure on their privates and everybody that's on their team to do a top rate job, and even though the next level do it in a next level way, to where they don't actually pressure you or force you or only give you ultimatums or make you feel guilty or or walk away from you if you're doing the best you can and not keeping up the speed, although it's a two-way street, because we can think we're doing the best we can, but if we don't ask them for help, then we're not doing the best we can, because we can always ask for help to do better in whatever it is that we're trying to accomplish. And the reason that there doesn't need to be any organization on a human level is several-fold. One is everything was laid out by T and Doe when they were here. Everything that we needed to know. So why am I broadcasting then? Well, because most people don't know what it is that T and Doe said and did and left behind, even though it's most of it's available on the internet, various places. Heavensgate.com is still being maintained by two former members. They have all of the information that was in the book that they published before they left. It's still posted there, and it's for free download of a text file, or you can buy the hard copy, which is not my website. I'm not managing that. I don't have anything for sale, although if I ever finish the book that I'm writing, I will put it up for sale so that I'll be able to get it into the bookstores and so that everybody can get a chance to see it. But meanwhile, I'm presenting a lot of the material that's in my book to individuals now, so that it'll give everybody a head start as to everybody that wants to learn about Tiando, give them a head start in understanding how all the scriptures spoken about as the Bible and the lost books of the Bible and the Nag Hammadi library and the Dead Sea Scroll material and Sumerian materials, and even related to in certain ways related to the Hindu Vedas, and in certain ways related to the teachings of the Buddha, or one of the Buddhas, or all of the Buddhas. I don't know much about some of them, but I do want to recap a little bit. The last two broadcasts have been about the book of Revelations, chapter 11, which is about the two witnesses, who I insist there is a lot of evidence to say that they were both Christs. Christ really standing for those who press the grape juice out of the grapes, or press the olive oil out of the olives. And that process destroys the actual olive, which is the physical vehicle that houses the oil, which is the essence of what produces the energy, which is the mind of the next level. In an energy signature, when the mind of the next level is exercised by expressing it to others, you're actually consuming that oil, and when you consume that oil, you open yourself up to receive more. So that's the path to what is called enlightenment. There is no enlightenment on the human kingdom except for getting rid of human behaviors and ways and replacing them with next level behavior and ways, from and through receiving those behaviors and ways updated from the older members in the next level, who are actually physical beings that are beyond human. They are above human in every way, mentally and physically. They are an evolutionary level above human. And evolution, when I say evolution, I'm not talking about Darwinianism, if that's a word. That was, a little shot in the dark, basically, of trying to understand the way the garden was designed. The planet was designed as a garden to grow plants. Humans are plants, even though you can't see their root system. Their root system is very real. It's a human tree. And the next level created that tree. They created the whole genetic system. They created all the environmental systems. They created everything. They designed it. They develop it. And they maintain it. And they do that all to provide opportunity for those plants, when seeded with a little bit of their mind, to have the choice is very important, to gravitate to that mind and that understanding with thirst to want to understand and want to grow. And as a result, they draw more of that mind into their physical vehicle, the body of the human body. And that is actually starting to fill their container that was called in the old days a soul, which is actually a physical container that is given. It's it's in an energy frequency. I mean, it's in a frequency format, the design of it. So it's not physical like a container of olive oil. Don't compare it to a balloon, like a balloon in a vase. And he said the human vehicle is like a vase, and the human vehicle has its own mind that fills one of the balloons, which is basically the content of the brain and all the cells of the body through the genetic system. And that's the memory is all stored in the genetic system. But it's also separate in an energy format from the genes, so that if the body dies, that spirit, which is equivalent to mind, will still remain. And that's what's called a discarnate, a soul, not a soul, but a spirit, which is a mind that is without a body. That on the human level, it strictly does all the same things it did when it was alive in a human vehicle. And is responsible actually for many, many of the things that go on the planet, because of how all spirits gravitate to living human vehicles, so that they can have the same kind of experience they had when they were living. So basically they actually interface and seek to interface with human vehicles that will allow them to. And they do that by stimulating our interest in certain things, which will be the interest that they have. And then, so who we are, the only thing that we are, is this physical machinery and mental machinery that chooses what to do, what to say, what to think, and what to do with our lives. And so every time we make a choice, whether it's conscious or subconscious, we're actually designing our own mind. We're filling our spirit container, balloon, with human mind. Now, if the things that we're filling it with, the information that we're filling it with, because mind is synonymous with information. If what we're filling our mind with is true information, then it means it's from the next level, the creator's, the evolutionary level above human. Next level because it's a next step up the evolutionary ladder to their kingdom, which is above human in every way. They don't propagate like humans. They're not mammalian. They don't have reproduction. They don't have sexuality. They don't have digestive organs. They don't need to eat. Some of the younger members that are actually like apprentice members, like the Watchers were, what are called the Luciferian fallen angels, that produced the Nephilium, which were their offspring. They have the capacity to eat. Just like Adam was a vehicle that had the capacity to eat. Jesus, after he came out of the tomb, having become healed of the wounds that he suffered from being strung on the tree and had spikes stuck through his arms and feet, or his hands and feet, he was able to eat. He ate with his students. Yet he looked different, and he was able to enter the room without them knowing it. So he was able to change his vibrations so that they didn't see him enter the room. Whether he entered the room through a wall or through the door when they did or not. Probably entered through the door when they did. That's my guess. because I don't know, anyway, I don't want to go to why I think that, but Tiendo said that he had the ability to change his vibrations, which is a characteristic of a next level vehicle. Just like it's a characteristic of a human vehicle to walk and run and jump and laugh and change his facial expressions. It's a characteristic of a next level vehicle to actually make themselves invisible to certain other creatures. And they do that. It's very handy when they want to work and do something on the planet and they don't want to be seen. They can do the same thing with their spacecrafts. They can be right next to you, literally, and if you were able to reach them with your arm to touch them, you would feel something. I don't know what you would feel exactly. It wouldn't be, I don't think, as dense as one of our physical bodies, but you would feel something that you would know you were feeling something. Probably equivalent to like the fact that we can feel the wind. It's physical. It's composed of physical elements, and it can blow us down. It can destroy things because it's so powerful. But the members of the next level, although they can be without a vehicle, they operate using physical vehicles that can cloak, because they produce, the garden is constructed in dense physical material, so that they can raise the humans, all the life forms up into human, so that those humans can actually use those human bodies as like a cocoon, like an exercise machine, like a sparring partner, so to speak, that can be used to build the mind of the next level. So every time we choose next level behavior over human behavior, we are filling our soul container with next level mind. And that's the only kind of mind that can actually go into the soul container, is next level mind, as far as I know. I'm not positive whether that can be. I think that's the case. I think I can stand behind that. Because what happens to the Luciferians and the fallen angels is actually they lose some of the mind that they accumulated into their next level containers. And because of that, they lose sight of the realities that they once knew, that got them into a stage of development in the next level, to where they were given a spacecraft to operate and a crew to work with and certain tasks to observe humans in different ways and report back, so that the next level can use that information to further run the garden. The next level gives those individuals that opportunity before they actually graduated into next level membership. So they're like in an elementary stage. It's like a type of purgatory, but not exactly the same thing. But I guess it resembles that. But there's like, just like there's layers to the internal heaven, because heaven actually refers to all the elevated areas above the earth. Whether you're on the bottom of the earth or, it's always up, that you're looking out into the space, into the atmosphere and the sky and the upper atmosphere and where the planets are and where all the stars are. So that's all heaven. Now the next level, when they come to the planet, because they're not always here, although they have ways of monitoring what's going on, because they don't ever just leave the garden without any kind of monitoring. But I don't think, I may be wrong about that actually. I can't say that Tiendo talked about that exactly like that. So I might be wrong about that. But I'm showing you an example of when, since I try to do these broadcasts, I do try to say only the things that I know, that I got from T and Do, or that I deciphered from Scripture that T and Do gave me clues about. And so, so there's a range of there's a big range there of how to interpret things and transinterpolate things to, I guess it's not transinterpolate, it's just interpolate, to come up with a certain amount of conclusion, which conclusion is kind of a misnomer because there's always room for more growth. Like T and Do always said, that this works for now. This works for your understanding right now. They actually told us sometimes that they didn't think it was totally right what they were saying. When they said right, meaning the most accurate way of looking at it. But they said this is what you need now to understand. Like, in fact, they talked about that in terms of the soul. At first, it was assumed that all human vehicles had souls. But then, a number of years into being with the group, T and Do sat us down in a meeting and said, that this is an exercise they wanted to give us that they believe is true, but they think there's more to it. But for now, this is what you need to get into your heads and make adjustments to in your brains to receive. And so, but the idea was that all humans do not have souls. Well, that kind of freaked out, I think, a good measure of us, of the 40 or so students at the time. And I mean, you know, we didn't talk with one another about things like that. That wasn't part of our overcoming and job. There was no gossip or chit-chatting. It was strictly like you were in the laboratory of a science experiment. So everything was, even though there was humor and fun, but there was still none of that what T called human interface. If you had a task to do that required you to communicate with somebody, then you talked with them about it. And you talked about that task. But there was no talking about the past. We had cut off ourselves from the past. So there was no reason to talk about that. Anyway, so I remember thinking when I went to my out-of-craft task, is what we called our jobs that we had, because we had to survive by making sticks, what T and Do called sticks, money, in order to pay the bills, because at the time we were living in very large homes, single-family homes around the United States and the West, actually, Colorado and Texas and New Mexico and Arizona and California. And sometimes we had 3 of those homes. And we were renting them, so you can imagine the bill was, easily over $10,000 a month for those homes. So half the crew had jobs, and we ended up starting with, some of us with kind of menial jobs, and we worked our way up and eventually got into better jobs, and I ended up becoming a computer programmer, and others had like degrees before they joined, and so they were able to find better jobs more quickly. And anyway, but I'm just giving you little tidbits about the classroom. That's what Tiendo called that environment. It was a classroom, even though there were no blackboards, and we didn't. Although we did sit, and we did have meetings with them, which were like lectures, but they weren't meetings like you see in the Christian world. Hardly. There was no preaching or hell and damnation kind of talk or telling people if they don't believe this, then they're going to go to hell. If they drop out of the group, they're going to go to hell. Even though it was understood that this was a very selective path, an extraordinary experience, and that we were picked, we were hand-picked. I mean, a lot of humans were given the opportunity. And it doesn't mean that the ones that accepted the opportunity were any more special than the rest, because everybody gets their chance eventually anyway. All the ones that the next level gives seed to, which are not all the humans in the human kingdom. Because frankly, they don't need that many new members. They don't really need any members. This is that's why they call it a blessing and a gift, because they could do fine. They know they're going to get new members because they're the only ones with the truth about everything in the reality. And so if they want to simulate new members, they just give a little piece of that truth to the humans in a mental form, and a certain amount of the humans, if they've been if they've had a decent upbringing, which they see to that too, will gravitate to it because they will recognize that it's above and beyond anything else. They will just have an automatic draw to the heavens, to the stars, to higher behavior. Not killing one another, not stealing from one another, not lying and cheating and deceiving and manipulating and not coveting whatever everybody else has because we think we're going to be made better by having stuff and not being in competition with everybody else, to see who's got the most attention or who's got the most money or who's got the most looks and the most headlines and Hollywood shows and platforms on the podiums of the government and all the ways that and the religions, all the religious platforms. All those things are human behaviors. The next level don't have any of it. The next level members do not have any of that. Yet they have growth. They never have a dull moment. They're always impressed by their environment and how phenomenal it is. When you look up into the heavens and you see how phenomenal that all is, or if you look out into the ocean, you know how phenomenal that ocean is, and the fact of and you look in from space, from the space telescopes, or from the pictures from the orbiting spacecrafts, and you see what the Earth looks like from a distance, and it's like, whoa, knowing what's going on down there, and you know how phenomenal it is. Well, that doesn't change when you're actually a member of the next level on a spacecraft. It's just more of it. And there's music in the next level. The spheres actually all have sounds, and you can hear those sounds working together. And you travel, and you do tasks. You work in laboratories. You could be working on a new system for a genome. You could be working on new elements to have better products, better growth development that are more adaptable to different environments. more species of animals that you're experimenting with to see if you can generate the way to, and how do they actually make those changes? Well, they do it with the environment. They don't do it with hocus pocus. Even though the older members, I just was hearing a broadcast the other day about how when light gets to a certain intensity, it actually produces matter. The electrons actually stimulate I'm not sure exactly how they do this, and either are the scientists. But intense heat actually generates matter. And I don't know if it's because it evaporates everything, and so what's left of the particles. And I'm not saying everything about it that they were saying in the broadcast. I'm not equipped to actually talk about that in an intelligent way. But when it said that the Word was made flesh, and the Word is the mind, and the mind is equivalent to the light, where it says, like in Revelations 12:1, that the woman, and appeared a great wonder. Let me switch scenes here. And there appeared a great wonder in heaven, a woman clothed with the sun, and the moon under her feet, and upon her head a crown of 12 stars. Well, clothed with the sun, actually, sun, actually the word there is actually ray. And I think it's woman clothed. In other words, the clothing on this individual that they're talking about is a woman's clothing. And that clothing is wrapped around the sun. The sun is actually a term for a father. In astrological terms, which came from astronomy, the sun is the father, and the moon is the mother. In astronomical terms. And that's not just strictly talking about Western astrology, because the Chinese were working with astrology way before anybody in the West was doing it. And the Indians from India were doing the same thing with astrology. And the Christians that say that astrology is from the devil are basically talking the words of the devil. Although it can be abused, like everything can be abused. And how can it be abused? Well, everything given to the human kingdom are given as tools and opportunity to grow closer to the creators of the human kingdom. So if we're looking at the stars and the heavens, and we have understandings about what a lot of the things mean when they were given labels as to the constellations, the Great Bear and the Pleiades, the Seven Sisters, and the Big Dipper and the Little Dipper and the Scorpius, and the Draconis for the dragon, and all these things, they all have names. All those names came from someplace originally. And they all came from the next level originally, but they were all influenced by the Luciferian space aliens, the fallen angels, the ones that were working in an elementary apprentice-type capacity for the next level before getting their full-fledged wings. And instead of getting their wings, they dropped away and decided to reject what their older member had been offering them until then. in order to do what they wanted to do in their agenda on the human kingdom. So, so astrology developed, and the reason I'm bringing that up is because this verse in Revelations 12:1 is about T, the older member of Do, who's our older member. So she's like our grandfather, older member, if I want to put it that way. Older member is actually the way I think T and Do would have said it. Now T never told Do that, or the class, but Do came to recognize that. And he recognized that through a lot of effort from T, which is in the next verse, where she says, and she's being with child, cried, travailing in birth, pain to be delivered. Do told us about how at one point T sat down on the curb of a street and put her hands in her head and said she wasn't going anywhere. She wasn't taking another step. Because Do said he was giving her such a hard time on making certain decisions. And what it came down to, which Do didn't give us the details, but what he said is that when they were faced with a decision, when they were traveling around for the first year as they were awakening, because the awakening was a gradual awakening over approximately a year's time. I think it was more like 9 months, actually. Do, at first, he wondered if she was hitting on him. This is not really Do, because Do is actually the fully awakened individual, the fully awakened part of the mind that came from the next level, that had fully embedded itself in that human vehicle that was named Marshall Applewhite. So what was rebelling against T was the human mind that he had accumulated from his birth and that he had received from the genetic structure through the womb of the vehicle's mother. And he had to get rid of that. But he didn't have it wasn't automatic to get rid of that. He recognized he had something to do with T pretty quickly after they met. But T had to pursue him. And they met on the basis of astrology, actually, because T was an astrologer. But she wasn't an astrologer that was professionally, selling her services. I'm not aware that she was. I mean, she might have taken some money for some of her services. I don't know. It doesn't really matter. But she wouldn't do a chart. The reason I say that I don't think she was selling her services was because Do said that she would not do a chart for somebody, cast a chart, unless they asked her 3 times. And she would not tell them that they needed to ask her 3 times. So Do actually wanted her to do his chart. That's how he learned that she wasn't going to do it unless she asked 3 times. But they met in a hospital, and of course this was recorded wrong in Wikipedia, and I tried to fix it, but they won't let me fix it because I don't have enough credentials. Even though Do said it in 88 update that was published, that he met T while T was substituting for another nurse in Houston Hospital where T worked in the preemie baby ward. So she was in charge of keeping babies alive when they were born premature. I mean, what greater service than is there to the human kingdom than that? On a core level. And so T was actually substituting for another nurse and tending to an individual that was in the hospital that was one of Doe's friends. And Doe specified in 88 Update, where he tells his story, that it was a male friend. Doe didn't have to tell everybody in the world that it was a male friend. He said that for a reason, because we in the class, up until that point, we didn't really know that that Doe had been gay. Not Doe, that Marshall Applewhite had been gay, because Doe wasn't gay. Doe didn't have any sexuality at all. Doe had overcome that vehicle's desire for sexuality and would not let that vehicle have any sexuality. I think Doe even said that the vehicle itself didn't want any more sexuality either. Grew to that. But the vehicle itself wasn't capable of eliminating its sexuality until the mind from the next level came into it and helped it. I don't know if eventually it might have been able to do that, but it's not that nobody can do that. But usually when a human gets rid of their sexuality, they take on another addiction, like a religious addiction. Which a religious addiction isn't the same thing as, or spiritual addiction, which isn't the same thing as overcoming one's sexuality. Well, they might overcome actually the act of sex, okay, but they won't overcome the passion and the energy and the gratification that they get, that some humans get from sexuality and relationships with other humans. By substituting it for religion, because the religion performs a different form of that, but it's all sensuality. It's all pleasing to the emotions. That's why you see people that are religious being depicted as weeping and overcome with feeling, and I mean, and it's true. Those feelings do exist, because what happens is, I mean, the next level has feelings too. They have emotions also. They're not without emotion, but their emotion is different, and it's not stimulated by the vehicle. It's stimulated by the mind. So it's not that people that are religious are all being stimulated by a false force. They can feel very close to their Heavenly Father and have nothing to do with, have no knowledge of T and Do or Jesus or anybody, but they can just have a sense of their creators and feel emotionally connected to them. And they can cry from that, and and they can do wonderful things for others. And that's part of their lesson at that stage. But there's also a trap. There are also traps to all that religiosity. If you don't remain open and desiring to know more and how to serve more and how to be closer and how to see more of reality, and so that the people that are in the religions, if they don't go back to their original literature that they got from whoever was said to have founded that religion by, like for instance, Jesus or Moses or Krishna or Buddha, to find out the root of everything they said, which is totally lost now in all the religions. All the religions have totally abominated, desolated is the word for it, I guess. Uh, um, some huge percentage of that information. I mean, some residual is that people don't kill each other, okay, and they don't steal, and they act civilized, but that's the residual that, and there's other things, other characteristics, kindness and compassion and empathy, and those are all characteristics of members of the next level. But so I don't mean to sound that that the religions and spirituality are void of that, but what they're void of, it seems like anymore, is being able to progress any further while clinging to their current understanding. And yet we have in the New Age, we have people that are talking about what they believe are new things all the time, but they're really not. Like, for instance, there's one station that I listen to called In the Spirit, which is a radio station. I'm fond of the host of the show. It's a radio show coming out of one of the colleges that has a radio show in the New York area. And he has guests all the time that talk about different forms of spirituality. And they they do their mantras, which is the same thing as chanting, and they do their kirtans, which is the same thing as like the Krishna people do with dancing and singing, and the Christians, some of the Christians do. With Christians, of course, the strict sects, SECTS, don't do, but they do the shaking, or they're rolling on the floor, or they're holding their hands up and feeling the spirit, and clapping, and different things that excite them, and singing, of course, and then there's the meditations, and the Christians, and everybody, they have, and the Buddhists and the Hindus and the Jews and Islam, they all have their forms of prayer and meditation, and most of them all have like mantras that their prayers are, where they are repeating the same thing over and over again. Like you hear in these kirtans, you hear this music that these musicians are making, and the singers, they're saying the same thing over and over again, like the Hare Krishna, and I can't remember some of them right now, but they're saying the same things over. It's just basically praise him, praise them, and they talk in terms of God, but they don't have any deeper understanding of what that is than all the archaic religions, all the older religions do, except in a very general framework, but actually related mostly to the past. Although in the New Age movement of the current spiritual groups, they are venturing out and understanding how everything does have a scientific framework around it, and everybody's connected by molecules and energy, and how light actually creates matter, and those things are titillating to the mind to talk about and think about. And so these people that are gravitating to these New Age religions and New Age groups and cults and gatherings are, of course, of the same mind, and they're all excited by all this, and yet they're missing the biggest chunk of what all that was trying to show us. That there are actually living beings that provided all that to us. Without giving recognition to those living beings, that they recognize that they exist, and that they're giving and that they are personal. They are the person of those things. They exist. Jehovah means existing one. I am. I exist. I be. I am. Then it's basically like denying that you have parents that brought you into this world. And at this time period, the next level really are not interested in anybody that doesn't show an affinity to be interested in them, to want to know what's on their mind. And that's what Tiendo came to share, that it was not a religious movement, because the religion is the bastardization of the truth. It's the distortion and the misinformation and the disinformation, and it's the deceit and lies that are spread about the true information. So the next level is the terminology that Tiendo used, because that's now the new way of talking about the truth. That we're talking about an actually evolutionary level above human, where you have to, if you want to become a member, you have to show them that you want to become a member. And the way you show them is by being willing to separate from everything in the human kingdom, all behavior and ways of the human kingdom. And of course you'll still keep the next level characteristics that some humans still have, and like not killing people and things like that, because and being kind to others, and not non-judgmental, and giving everybody an equal shake, and not treating your enemies any worse than actually you would treat somebody that's not your enemy. Recognizing that a lot of times, well, not a lot of times, the reason people do terrible things is because they've been bred to do terrible things, and they just don't know any better. That's what Jesus said as well when they were, putting those nails through his arms and stuff. Forgive them, for they don't know what they're doing. If they really knew who he was, they wouldn't do that. But they don't know who he was, so they were just following orders. And those were the orders from the heads of the religion. It was the religious that killed him. And it's the religious that always kill the members of the next level when they come incarnate, or they come to work through a human as a prophet, which is the same kind of thing. It's coming incarnate, but I don't think it's exactly the same as the way an older member comes incarnate, which I don't want to get into now, but I could talk about a little more. But so just to put a little dot on the sentence about the soul, excuse me a second though. I'm sweating too much here. I had to take this off a second. I'll just switch it back to me so that anybody that's coming to the broadcast knows what this talker looks like. Not that it matters that much, but I think it's important that people know where the information is coming from, what vehicles are actually repeating or disseminating the information from Tiendo, and the understandings that have come from that. So what they said about souls, maybe a couple weeks later, was they said, forget about that. And I said this in the last broadcast too. They said, don't think about that anymore. You've adjusted to it. Because like I said, when I would go to my out-of-craft task, I would look at the people and think, they don't have a soul? That's weird. I don't know. Okay, but they don't have a soul. And it was a little disturbing. I didn't really like the idea of it. It just felt kind of creepy. But then I said, well, what difference does it make? They are what they are, and I am what I am, and because I knew that also it's not what you've been given, it's what you do with what you've been given. It's not what you've been given, it's what you do with what you've been given. And I say that to myself as much as anybody. And like Jesus said, for those that are given a great deal, more is required. Because you know better. There's power in information and in mind. That's very apparent in the human kingdom as well as in the next level. Next level, I think the older members, maybe just the older members, I don't know, can create matter with their mind, because their mind is so filled with energy, it becomes like compact, like a sun. It might be that a sun is actually a member of the next level. I don't know. Because that's not the only thing they can do. Also, it'd be like, how boring, right? If all you do is just burn? Well, no, because you could probably do, you might be able to be 1,000 suns, and you could also have a vehicle if you want, and go drive it somewhere, and you could land on the planet, and you could, you could check out what's going on. You could oversee a crew. And in the next level, they don't have insignias. They don't have anything that's on their vehicles that says, I am an older member. Although maybe the vehicle itself actually does emanate its power so that younger members know that that's an older member. But it wouldn't be through some kind of language, except, the language of the fact that that, a 220 volt charge is more than a 110. We know that because we look at the outlet and we can see that it's, it's got a different breaker on it or whatever. Anyway, so let me think if there are any loose ends I left that really need to be closed up. Well, I'm going to go back to the scripture. The records is what D&O called them the most of the time. So it's Father, Son, and the moon, actually, that word actually means, let me actually get it in front of me here. I'll switch to this scene here. Moon is, I clicked it here, Selene, from Celes, brilliancy, probably kin to the alternate of Harome, through the idea of attractiveness. If I go to Aramaic, it says To take for oneself, to prefer, choose. Some of the forms are borrowed from a cognate, helume, which is otherwise obsolete. Air, to take up or away, to raise, keep in suspense the mind, interesting, especially to sail away, by Hebraism, onasa, to expiate sin, away with, bear up, carry, lift up, loose, make to doubt, put away, remove, take away, up. To lift up is what it says the primary root is of that word. To lift up. I'm going to go back to take for oneself, to lift up. Like to lift up to oneself. To attract to oneself. To attract, to lift up to oneself. The attractiveness of the moon. And what is the moon but a reflector of the sun? And what is the sun in terms of the Father and the Son? In terms of the relationship that Jesus had with his Father? He wanted to do only what the Father gave him to do. He only wanted to say the things that his Father gave him to say. That was, he wanted to be a perfect reflector of the light from the Father. Do called themselves links. They said that they were like pipes, and they wanted to be completely empty of anything that would change or taint the communication of the mind coming from their older members. So Do did not want to taint anything that came from T. T did not want to taint anything that came from T's older member who was in the heavens on a spacecraft, who was actually T. Because T could operate more than one vehicle. And T's older member, because all older members have older members, except for, I guess, the chief of chiefs, which I don't understand enough about. I don't understand anything about, except that there is a chief of chiefs, according to T and Do. And that we will understand more about where the chief of chiefs came from, in those words, when we become members of the next level. But until then, it's all we're going to be able to do is understand the origin of our older members, being other older members, eventually coming from a human kingdom on a planetary system like the Earth. But it could be totally different than the Earth in many ways. And Do was said to have come from a different planet, as was Lucifer. And Lucifer came from, I believe, the same planet that Do came from, or actually the one that was called Do. It's the mind that ended up taking the vehicle that became called Do. Which was that's why the Luciferians are called space aliens, because all individuals that rebel against the next level, and that includes, that's all the dropouts. So if there's a member of T and Do's classroom, and they dropped out, and then they have to actually side with the human kingdom and the lower forces. And so they become fallen angels. Now, they may not try to work against the next level. If they don't try to work against the next level by like talking about T and Do, the information that T and Do brought, as if it's not true, they can talk about Tian-Do as if they don't believe in Tian-Do, but if they say what Tian-Do taught wasn't true, then they're going to end up losing their awareness of how true that information is, and that Tian-Do were the bearers of that information. They're going to lose that recognition, like I said before. And there might be some members of the dropouts that have lost all recognition of who Tian-Do were, and I don't know if they're talking about the next level, turning people's eyes away from the reality of the next level. If they're doing that, then they're joining the Luciferian camp, and the Luciferians want them. Because Luciferians, let me remind, are discarnate. They're not the ones that were actually in physical bodies at the time when they were given the name. They had the name Lucifer, angel of light, which was probably a name that he chose or a name that was given to him by his older member, because it happened in both ways with Tian-Do. They all, those vehicles eventually died, and but before those vehicles died, they, by teaching humans and in the human kingdom, like the way that space aliens are having contactees now, and had especially in the 40s and 50s. That's the way they teach humans to be on their team. They actually get new members that way. That actually can be physical, if they still have physical bodies, can be taken on the spacecrafts and can actually stay with them and do, and be with them on those spacecrafts if they want to be, or can be left to recruit more, like are doing on the planet, which is the real reason why they're contactees, because they're recruiting, even though they act like it's they're doing it. Well, they're not actually telling a mistruth when they say that they're doing it for the human kingdom, because they want to, get humans to recognize how they need to preserve the human environment and not stop polluting it and stop, doing things to make the vehicles grow in a toxic way and with deformities and brains that don't work very well, and even though they think they work well, or don't recognize the truth, don't believe in anything from outer space living, and don't believe that there's a spirit world, and all those things are part of the reality of this human kingdom. And so to not believe in them would mean that they could not take over those vehicles. If they brought them on a spacecraft with them, those vehicles would rebel, and they wouldn't work together well with the others that do have those beliefs. So they need to actually have vehicles that they recruit from the human kingdom that can operate on their spacecrafts and in their underground facilities on the Earth in a compatible way. Because they're also using all those humans because of the sperm and the eggs that they will provide, especially the sperm. You hear a lot less about the eggs being taken, but you hear a lot about abductees having their sperm removed from their bodies, or being forced to have intercourse with a being that looks a little bit like a human, but may have reptilian features, or big nose gray features, or whatever different branch on the human tree, because they're all human equivalents. All the space aliens are human equivalents. Next level members are not space aliens. And actually the space aliens really aren't space aliens. They really should be called more like a near space aliens. or upper atmospheric aliens from Earth. Or, any time, because Tiendo said they're really not allowed to go very far into space. So when we see things like through the space telescopes that are happening, I believe on the moon or related to the sun or any of the planets in those areas, they're not space aliens. Space aliens don't want to be out there anyway. They want to be where they can move their agenda ahead. And their agenda is to get off this planet permanently and to find another planet where they can start growing humans so that they can thrive off those humans. And they're trying to actually perfect life eternal, so that they don't have to keep on finding new vehicles, because they came to understand that such a thing existed. It's kind of like hearsay, though, for them, just the way it is for humans now. The fountain of youth or the eternal life is kind of like, nice idea, but I can believe in it, but I don't have any examples of it that I can really, take to the bank. But and so Luciferians, so they're on the spacecrafts, they don't think they're Luciferians, although some of them might, because they use those names for them, like the Rael experience. He was supposedly taken on a spacecraft, and they said that there was somebody there named Lucifer, and there was somebody there named Satan. Even though Satan means adversary, but maybe some individual took that name. Of course, there's any name, they could have taken that name as saying that they were an adversary to the next level, although to them the next level were just other space aliens like them who had perfected more technologies, so they're able to do more. And so they believe that they can get the same thing, and they actually talk about this, and they talked about this to Rael and to Alex Collier. They talked about that a lot, about the different levels of development. And they believe that there is a level of development that created all this and created all the planets. But that's not them. They don't know them. They don't have any relationship with them. And it's true. They don't. And they never will. Unless the next level gives them an opportunity to leave their space alien type existence, wherever that is, on a spacecraft or under the ground or under the sea, in their form of a laboratory or an underground facility, however sophisticated or not, to leave that, and also and actually discard their current human equivalent vehicle by crashing it on the planet at a time when the next level is planning to send one of their older member representatives to incarnate to do the same thing, so that they can join up with them on some spot on the globe, in which the older member will announce who they are after they awaken and where they came from, and that will be a signal to this individual that was given this chance to overcome their human equivalent behavior and ways and biology and lifespan, limited lifespan. And then they become part of a classroom to be taken through the steps of getting rid of self by their own desire. Because the next level can make robots if they want to. It's very easy to make robots to the next level. But they don't have any use for robots. In fact, many tasks, like even the task that T and Do are doing, T and Do's older members could have done. They could have done it just the same or maybe perhaps better. I think T and Do would probably say they could have done it better than them. But they're not into just them. They're not self-based. They're into giving opportunities for others to have what they already had. So they're not clinging to being the big shot. Not that T and Do were the big shots or thought themselves the big shots, but I kind of thought myself a little bit of a big shot when I was going around talking about T and Do to the Christian community in 1975. I mean, I didn't think of that consciously, but I felt like I was like a zealot, and I was telling the truth, and heck with them if they didn't believe me. And I still had some of that even when we went public in 1994. And that's why I'm not with them now, because I never overcame that sense of self-importance that next level members don't have and they have to get rid of. That's ego. Ego is a drug as much as any drug, as much as sensuality and sexuality and substance abuse and anger and power. Power, ego and power are kind of synonymous. I mean, even if it's ego that looks benefic, because you've created a corporation or a government or a kingship to where the people love you. And you're doing good things for everybody. You're helping everybody with their family, and you're spreading, you're dividing everything that you have as equal as you can with everybody, so that everybody has a fair shake. And so you might say that I'm a good king, you know. So how can you find fault with that? But the ego boost you're getting from supporting everybody else will be put to the test when the little next level member comes dressed in poor people's clothing, not looking like they're anything special, and they say they're from the next level, and if you want to graduate the human kingdom, you have to give away everything, even all your responsibilities that you took. You can pass them on to somebody else. Somebody else can be in charge of that corporation or that kingdom or that country. And you can learn to get rid of all that so that you're like a child. Like Jesus said, you have to become like a child. A child is totally trusting of their parents. I'm a child that has decent parents. Is totally trusting of their parents. And that's the relationship that each one of us need to have with the incarnate older members, or even when they're not incarnate. But the older members they know that it's not going to be easy for that human to become a child, because the opposite is what was promoted in the human kingdom, and they could not have actually survived in the human kingdom if they had remained a child, trusting everybody. Because the humans aren't worthy of that trust. Some are more than others in some respects, and others in different respects. But ultimately, no humans are worthy of total trust from another human. Unless they are actually a member of the next level. And so, and that comes through believing whether they are or not. And that belief comes by being given that little chip. P and Do talked about it like a computer chip at one time. A little a tag. They also talked about it as a tag. Although these are different, actually, there are different types of chips and there are different types of tags. And also talked about them as deposits. And there's different types of deposits of their mind, like seeds. Also, Jesus talked about them as a seed. He didn't need to go into all the different types of seeds that all those terms represent because they weren't ready for that at that stage. They had to come back. They had to be born again of flesh, which is a form of reincarnation, but not the same as the Eastern religions talk about reincarnation. Each human only has their own spirit, and then if the next level gives them a seed, then they have a soul pocket, but that soul pocket isn't guaranteed to grow, just like a blade of grass isn't guaranteed to grow out of the soil from the seed. So boy, time goes so fast with this. I hardly got through this first verse. And there appeared a great wonder in heaven, the woman clothed with the sun and the moon under her feet, and under her head a crown of 12 stars. I'm going to put that in the chat room quick. You know what? Forget about it. It's too late for that. So the moon, I believe, in this context is talking about the sun. The sun as in S-O-N. It's talking about Do. It's talking about Jesus, the one who was Jesus, and then came as into a new vehicle with a new name, as it says in prophecy, with a white head, as it says in prophecy, with a white hair, as it says in prophecy, and Do had white hair when he came public. In his mid-40s, the vehicle's mid-40s. And, it wasn't white, but it was white enough to, I think, qualify, considering that everything else qualifies, and his name was Apple White, like apple being the fall, because that was his actual sin. Sin meaning missing the mark. The mark was set, the goal was, because it was an experiment, to put certain members of the next level to the test that they hadn't been put to before that, and yet they became members of the next level. Although I'm not exactly sure how that all worked in practical terms and the kind of vehicle they had and all that. But what I believe was clarified last broadcast to me, which I still tend to believe is reflective of the truth, is that because T said that Do was also Adam. So if Do was Adam, we're talking about that the soul body that had grown to become above human, a member of the next level, a young member of the next level, I suppose, was if I understand the way this probably worked, which I'm trying to pull in right now, T, and I'm not saying this out of the blue, because T and Do talked about this in those Black Hawk tapes that you can listen to on my YouTube 3SPM station channel on YouTube that I posted the address of in the chat room in Blog Talk Radio. Just search on Black Hawk through my videos. And it will talk about the fall. And I'm going back and listen to that again myself because it's in 3 parts. But if I understand correctly, the experiment that was started, that was represented by Adam and Eve, was because of the falling of Lucifer and the fallen angels that fell with him, when it was talked about the third of that group. That would have been like T and Do's group having 33% falling away, which it actually, I think, did in the end, if you actually add up the numbers. Pretty close to that. But so they wanted to put those that had risen to the same level as the one that was called Lucifer had risen to, at least, I believe, which was a certain degree of graduation into next level membership, but not an adult member, more of a child member of the next level, a son of God. That's why it says in Genesis 6, the sons of God had relationships with the daughters of humans. So that they could be tested to see whether they would fall for the same trick that the one called Lucifer ended up falling for. I'm not sure how that actually happened, but in more detail, but I'm not going to try to pull that in on the spot, because this is just hard enough to just try to think about this. Even though it doesn't seem like it's complicated, but I don't want to just make stuff up. But so what I think, so then that younger mind from the next level was then put into that vehicle that was actually designed, made, not propagated by humans, by reproduction. It was made. There was no mother for Adam. The older member, T, took that younger member's mind, and the younger member wanted to do this for their older member. So this was a task that they were being assigned, to go enter into that vehicle that was just made for him. And so when it says that the Elohim breathed the breath of life into the nostrils of the vehicle named Adam, and that made Adam a soul, that was the process of giving a deposit of a soul body into that vehicle, so that that vehicle could end up becoming a living being. It's a living being automatically when it gets a soul, but that doesn't guarantee it's going to become a living being in the sense of being becoming a member of the next level. It makes them a child only, and a very young child at that. And so it was a test. And so all they needed was a simple criteria so they created the other vehicle named Eve from the same genetic material that Adam was made out of. I'm not sure I understand why they did that, but they said that he needed a helpmate, and that might have been, I think what Tiendo said, and I'm going to have to go back and look at this a little more, what they said through one of the students' papers was that that Adam was lonely. He wasn't happy by himself. So since he wasn't satisfied to be by himself, the next level took that as, well, I guess he needs to learn to become an individual instead of, and learn to recognize that all he needs is a relationship with his older member. That's all he really needs to be happy. But if he doesn't have enough mind in that vehicle, then we have to set up a circumstance to where he can learn that. And so he's going to have to actually have a relationship with another vehicle that he can end up satisfying his desire to have company with, and then he will learn that he's going to have to, then down the road, well, I don't know that they had to go down the road. I think they just decided to just respond to that circumstance by giving him a helpmate, as it says in Genesis. And so then, so he was given a helpmate, and the helpmate also had the instructions. Although the helpmate didn't seem to understand the instructions the same, because the helpmate changed the instructions when the helpmate repeated back those instructions. Eve, which was just brought to my attention recently by some preacher on a website where I was studying something, so that was helpful to see. Because part of the program of becoming a member of the next level is that you can follow instructions. Because they don't want to be able to, they don't want to give instructions just like somebody in the military doesn't want to give instructions to a captain of a crew, and then the captain ignores them or changes them. Or, I mean, yes, if you run into circumstances where you need to change them because there's been circumstances have changed, the older member wants you to adapt those, but the older member really wants you to check with them. But if you can't check with them because the older member is out of range, and that happens in the next level as well, because the older members aren't there all the time for everybody round the clock, because they want individuals to exercise their own free will and choices and make decisions that they know they can always fix, so that they don't do too much damage to whatever it is that they might have made a wrong decision about. So the next level wants that to happen. They want the free will to be totally exercised, whether you're a member of the next level or whether you're a human learning to be acceptable on a crew in the next level. So when Eve was overcome by the temptation to break the instruction, and that temptation came from the Luciferian space alien that was that probably had a physical body, and that physical body might have been very pleasing to the eye, and I believe would have spoke in a whisper in a very gentle manner and made some suggestions of different ways of thinking that Eve was influenced by, and that influenced Adam to break instruction. So once Adam did that by eating that fruit, the next level knew that at that point that he had flunked the test. But that was the intention, to see if he would flunk the test. If he didn't flunk the test, then there would have been another test, and another test, and another test, until the next level was satisfied that he didn't need those tests. But the next level knew that since Lucifer and 30, a third of those fellow very young apprentice type members of the next level, angels, fell away, that something was going to influence Adam to fall away and break the rules. And if Adam didn't do it, then they would put somebody else to the test of the crew that had graduated into that stage in the next level. Because if a third fell away, there were 2/3 that didn't. Because they would want to, close that loophole. The next level doesn't want people to fall away, so they look to make it so that you can't fall away. And how do they do that? By making it harder to get into the next level. And that's something that T said that she was going to do when she got back. When she was up front looking at what had happened as a result of the Luciferians spawning continuous genetic human vehicles and then filling them with their mind. It got to the point to where they think we all got here by just crawling out of the sea. Just by some kind of automatic evolution, which is absurd. It's so nonsensical that it's ridiculous, but it's because we don't have any examples of it. And we don't have any examples of anything that humans can make by just osmosis, just leaving them. Like taking a whole bunch of elements and saying, okay, I'm going to put them all together here. You can do it with computer models. You could probably put all the pieces to a robot in software, a software robot, in one container. But then don't give them any instructions on how to work with each other to build those materials into something. And see if they eventually do it on their own. Or see if you can change the environment to stimulate them to create those interfaces and have that coordination, and have that systematic development. They can't do it. It can't be done because it takes design and intelligence. So anyway, so once Adam broke the rule of following instructions, he had to learn that rule the hard way. And so he couldn't be left in an environment where everything was provided for him if he couldn't be trusted to take care of that environment according to the instructions that are given. So he had to leave that environment. And so he was basically left to fend for himself, and because he recognized that he had fallen, and that fall actually came with a chemical stimulation of his desire for a mate. They began, they were attracted to each other, and he felt guilt about that, but it became, it's what the next level at that point knew needed to happen, that he needed to, they needed to work with him more from scratch. He had to be taken through, that genetic structure had to be rebuilt from the ground floor, and the mind had to grow with it to where it could be presented with opportunities and choices to grow to recognize the next level and the value of the next level and the value of their instructions. And then once they recognized that, they would become children in the next level, and then they could be given next level vehicles that no longer could actually fall away, because they would have overcome all the characteristics of the human kingdom that led them to fall away. I don't know if that makes any sense, but that's my current understanding, and I believe that is from Tiendo, although I might have got some parts of it a little wrong, and I'll do some more research, and you can do that as well, and tell me if anything I said sounded not like Tiendo's mind, according to Genesis and the documents that are on the Heaven's Gate website and the tapes that Tiendo left behind talking about Black Hawk. I don't think they talked about Adam anywhere else than those Black Hawk tapes, those 3 tapes. But there was talk about it in one of the documents written in 1996 by one of the students. So, now I want to point out something in the next verse here. And I talked about how being with child, cried in birth, and pain to be delivered. That was the process that T had to go through to actually bring Doe through the birth canal. Now, this birth is actually it's a parturition. Look at how it's with Odin, like Odie. Believe it or not, a lot of times the words actually follow. And I could talk about that more, but I'm not prepared to, so I won't waste the time on it right now. But it comes from Odun, which I don't automatically believe all the times they make references. I kind of research them a lot of times when it doesn't make a lot of sense, like it doesn't seem to be a root of the word they're talking about. Because they make mistakes, and I'm going to show you one of the mistakes now in the next 17 minutes. But a pang or a throe, especially of childbirth, but pain, it's basically saying that that this woman being with child, and of course with is because of, is also like with, because of the child that this individual is going through this, and so you can't really assume any of the words are correct, and doesn't mean that it's immediately following in time. There can be very long gaps in human time in between ands. And can also mean but, also, and so you have to consider that too. Especially in the heart, a lot of the verses that are difficult to really try to understand, but which they're all kind of difficult in some ways. But and cried, croak, interesting. To call aloud, to cry out, to scream. Exclaim. Well, that's interesting. That's, it's an effort. It's like T sat on the side of the road and put her hands on her head, and she was crying. I don't know if there were tears coming down, but there might have been. And she said she wasn't going to go a step further. And it took that for Doe to wake up and say, "I'm sorry," And that was over, because what Doe said later was that T would see a decision, and she would say, "No, we don't need to go through that. We don't need to go to that church, or take that direction, or go to that house, or ask that person for help, or whatever they were doing, or give that person the message." Or go to this organization to give them the message. She might say something like that. I don't know in particular. I don't have any details. But, and Doe would say, well, why not? Uh, and then she would do it with him. And then inevitably they would find out that it was wasted time, that it didn't accomplish what they would hope would have been accomplished. There wasn't somebody to talk to or blah, blah, blah. And T knew that because T's connection was so sensitive that all she did was sense that it wasn't a direction to go in. But Doe didn't know that T had that connection to that degree. So he had to learn that through the hard knocks, and T had to bear it. And Doe said that he gave her a hard time for that time period of probably at least 9 months until they awoke in Gold Beach. I think by that time, I think that's when Doe was more or less born, or sometime after that. Might have been actually born when he, by the time he went public. I mean, somewhere in between there, he was born. And that comes in the next verse that says, well, actually, that's what I wanted to get to, because notice this crown here. This is talking about, and there appeared another wonder in heaven. This is Revelations 12:3. I guess I should put it in the chat room. Oh boy, where the heck is that? Shouldn't be lazy, Sawyer. If it's important, then it's important to put in the chat room. Okay. For the individual that's there. And there appeared another wonder in heaven, and behold, a great red dragon, having 7 heads and 10 horns and 7 crowns upon his heads. Well, I'm not going to talk about the 7 heads and the 10 horns and the 7 crowns exactly. Although I suspect that those are, wow, I just had an idea of what those were. I think the 7 crowns are 7 individuals that fell away. The 7 heads of the 7 individuals, the falling. So that would say that the classroom at the time that Lucifer fell away would have been 21 members. Oh no, wait, no, 8, 24, because the red dragon is 1, and then he's got 7 heads, so there's 7 others, so 8, 16, 24. Well, maybe the 10 horns, because the 10 horns represent the workers, the battlers. So actually, that might be saying 18 individuals fell away. I don't know. I have to look at that more. But when it says crowns here, it's a different crown than up here. Oh, that's not what I wanted to do. Sorry. I got to go back to this other. Oh, I never went to this. Okay, never mind. I get confused. I'm not thinking right here. Here we go. This says crowns, but the word is actually diadema. Diadema. A diadem. As bound about the head. A crown. Okay? But if you look at dia, you see that it's a primary preposition denoting the channel of an act. The channel of an act. The channel of an act. Then you go back and look up deo. Bind. The channel of an act. The binding channel of an act. The binding. The bonds. That the channeling that bonds somebody by the act. The instrument, the channel would be like an instrument. Binding, that puts a binding on somebody. So, and they're bound with their minds, their head. The 7 crowns are upon the head. And the head is associated with the mind. So, in other words, these individuals were crowned. They have a different crown. So, because if you go back to this crown here, that is the crown that the woman has on her head. It's from Stephanos, from an apparently primary Stepho, to twine or wreathe a chaplet as a badge of royalty, a prize in the public games, or a symbol of honor generally, but more conspicuous and elaborate than a simple fillet or fillet, literally or figuratively a crown. I should go to that fillet. But if you look at the application of Stephanos, it takes you to Revelations 6:2. It's the same crown that the white horse is given. And it's the same crown that let me see another spot. It's not said as a crown, but what happens in the birth after this experience with the fallen angels is she brings forth a man-child, and that man is actually male, a male child. And child is actually son, a male son, who was who shall, it's talking about the future tense in the sense of purpose, whose purpose is to rule, to tend as a shepherd. See, why did they use the word rule there when it's to tend as a shepherd? They should say whose purpose was to tend as a shepherd. They got to put rule in there. You know, whose influence is that? That's the Luciferian influence. With a with iron standard, which means a very strict standard, a very stern standard, a very, like I said, strict standard. They don't want. They're not making it easy to be on their team, to be a sheep in their fold. And her child, this individual, the son, was caught up. Herame, catch away, just like rapture. That's where the word rapture came from. It's actually caught away, like a fish, like Jesus says, making you fishers of men. They were catching away, pulling them away from their human roots. It's catching away. Fishing, when you take a fish and you catch the fish, you take it out of the water. They're no longer in their environment where they thrive. And now they're taken into a new environment, and they're going to be dead to that old environment. But with the next level, they're going to be put on life support in the next level's environment, in a human cocoon, in a house somewhere where the next level has their spacecraft that is cloaked, and they can actually create the environment in mind and body so that they can regulate the difficulties for those students, so those students can actually grow. Anyway, and the child was caught up because T actually had to pull Doe out of his world and had to pull him out of his human thinking, of that vehicle thinking. When I say Doe, I'm talking about the human vehicle he had. That's what he was having. That's what Doe was having to overcome that by getting his mind into that human vehicle, into that brain. And that vehicle wanted to do that, but wanting to do it and doing it is a struggle. But Tiendo said to us all along, the students, get your mind in the vehicle. Get your mind in the vehicle. And I never know what she was talking about really. But she was actually talking to those souls that had come back to take over those vehicles, to make them to bring them through their chrysalis, their Christing, so that they could graduate into their next most appropriate step towards full next level membership, which at least I think 24 of those actually graduated to adult next level bodies, and then some others are going to still need more lessons in the human kingdom at a future date, but they had graduated to probably, I believe, to receive intermediary human equivalent vehicles that we would think of as space alien vehicles, like the one that Adam had, so that they could do tasks for the next level on spacecrafts for the next level, but they would be given the opportunity to choose to rebel from if they wanted to, because they hadn't yet overcome. So they can learn a lot of things by doing that, and then they will have to go through a similar experience to what Adam went through to see whether they could pass the test of making it into the next level after going through that, which Doe did actually when he came back after the Adam fall. Was basically Adam was discarding the next level mind, a lot of it that he had received, and so he was kind of having to start from scratch to pull in that mind, not entirely, but somewhat. I think he still had faith. He still had belief in his older members, so he knew that. But then that same soul body was brought back for the experience to incarnate in the body that became known as Enoch. And Enoch walked with God, so Enoch didn't break any instructions, and Enoch was taken. And so that physical body was actually taken back into the next level, as was Moses and Elijah and Jesus, in order to demonstrate to those that witnessed that they were from the next level. But that didn't need to happen with T and Doe, because they didn't need to demonstrate that anymore, because they had graduated the first fruit harvest. And we got 40 seconds left. But this word shouldn't have been crown in both places. They should have distinguished the differences. But the Luciferians saw to it that became confused. So with that said, another broadcast of T and Doe, two witnesses, evolutionary level above human. And I'll be posting this on the YouTube channel with the video footage as well, so you can see my funny face and the scriptures that I posted.
Thank you for using Blog Talk Radio. Goodbye.